What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners. This is episode 51, and today we're going to be covering WWE Stomping Grounds, the pay-per-view from Sunday night. And it was on the whole a very good show, but I'm going to be getting into that in more detail very soon. Before, like we always do, let's start with some plugs. If you want to reach out to us on Twitter, you can do. Our Twitter handle is withjohners_pod. We're on Instagram as well, so reach out to us on Instagram and check out what we do there. www.instagram.com/wrestling with Johners. And of course, you've got our Facebook group. Just go onto Facebook and search Wrestling with Johners. If you're listening to us on Apple iTunes, then of course don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating and some comments, and if you do, I'll give you a shout out on the podcast. And of course, if you do enjoy listening to the Wrestling with Johners podcast, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, share, tell your friends and tell your family, and do what you can to help me grow this podcast to all of you lovely listeners out there. We are your kind of only choice really for your weekly NXT UK, WWE and all-round pro wrestling updates. So search for us on social media, and don't forget to subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. But today we do have a special guest host. Now it's very late in the evening where he is, but I've got Tommy from Watchalong Wrestling, the YouTube channel. And Tommy, welcome to the Wrestling with Johners podcast. It's great to have you on board today.
Oh, it's great to be here, Johners. Thanks so much for having me on. And I know we've been trying to put this together for a little while. I've been listening to your show, and you've been doing some really great stuff. So it's an honor to be here, and I'm excited about it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So tell us a little bit about your products, because you've got a lot going on. If anybody checks out your YouTube page, you've got the kind of the Watchalong Wrestling channel where you do your live watchalongs. You've got your video diaries where you go out on your wrestling drives, and your WrestleMania vlogs and all the big shows that you go to. So there's lots of content on your YouTube channel. But tell us a little bit about how long you've been doing it for, and what got you interested in doing your own YouTube channel based around wrestling.
Yeah, so it's funny. A few years ago, I have a really long commute to work. So I started the YouTube channel a few years back, kind of just doing something just to keep me, I guess, motivated to continue the drive to work and kind of entertain myself. So just put on the camera, started talking about wrestling, and I do it from time to time. Well, didn't really take it too serious. And then actually, a funny story. I was on my honeymoon last year, and I was trying, and we were in Africa, and I was trying to find some sort of stream or something, some way to watch CM Punk's fight on the UFC, his second fight where he got destroyed by Mickey Gall.
Yeah.
And I went in with like hopes that he was going to do well. It didn't work out for him, but I was trying to find some way to listen and try to find something I could do, because I couldn't order the show from where I was when we had fallen asleep. And this is like real like middle of the night stuff. So I ended up searching up like live stream of UFC, and I found somebody who was watching UFC and commenting on it. And when I saw them doing this, everybody was just like in the chat room. Everyone was going along with what he was doing while watching. And I was like, wow, I should really do this. Like, I constantly watch wrestling all the time. I'm always watching like older shows, simply because my wife at the time was working overnights as a nurse. So I had a lot of free time, and all throughout the night, I'd watch these shows, and I'd call my friends and say, hey, remember this SummerSlam 98 or something like that? We'd go back and forth. And what ended up happening was I was like, let me try this out. Let me see how it goes. And so I started it out with just one full-length classic wrestling show to watch along with. And hopefully people would tune in, kind of do that. But I realized it was a major commitment. I was asking people to basically give up 3 hours of their night to watch an old show with me. And that's a hard thing to do. So I started doing that. And then basically what happened was Wrestle Kingdom 7, I guess, or Wrestle Kingdom, I guess, or actually, I think it's 13, whatever the last Wrestle Kingdom was.
Yeah.
And I wanted to watch it, and it was like middle of the night here because the show started at 3 a.m. And I was like, you know what, let me turn on my YouTube and just watch the show and do some commentary on it and talk, and hopefully somebody will be there to watch with. And suddenly that's when it started to gain traction. I think like that night, it was like all of a sudden there was people watching with me. We were chatting about the show together, and I was just having a great time. And I realized quickly there that like people want to see the live shows, and they want someone to talk to with the shows. And I want to talk with people about the shows. So that's kind of how it started from there. And then the vlogs, just I've been lucky this year. WrestleMania was in town. We have friends out in Arizona, so I got to go to the Royal Rumble. And started my Twitter, which is @WatchWrestlePod, and really just kind of picked up talking with people on there, and people would say, hey, are you going to vlog from your trip? And I was like, yeah, why not? Let's try it. And so sometimes it's just kind of throwing all things together at the wall, and that's kind of what Watchalong Wrestling is. It's been a lot of fun, though. I've been doing it about a year, and it's been a good time.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. I've seen the majority of your videos on YouTube, and they are very good. So, yeah, keep up the good work with that. But I want to ask you a little bit about your wrestling fandom. When did it all start for you? When did you first come across WWE or WCW? Kind of who the big stars, the big players that were knocking around when you first got into it, and what kind of really pulled you in? What attracted you to become a wrestling fan?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a WWE kid for my entire life. I grew up, it was a situation where, like, my mom was at work, like, all weekend long. So from the littlest stages of when I was, like, an infant in a little carriage, my dad would watch wrestling all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And I never really turned back from there. It was like WWE was where it was at. I was a little Hulkamaniac growing up, loved the Ultimate Warrior. That was when I was really, really little. But then actually, believe it or not, like my era, and I heard on your 50th episode, you kind of mentioning it a bit too, that kind of that new generation, that era with Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, some of the zanier characters. Could you give Man Mountain Rock a little shout out during your last episode? And
oh yeah,
that was where it was for me. Like, I love that stuff, and that stuff I thought was just like the greatest thing. And WCW not as much, because once WWE started doing all the monthly pay-per-views, we could only afford like my dad was like, hey, you have a choice. It's either WWE, WCW. I'll get you all the pay-per-views, but only to one, league. So one company. So it was WWE all the way.
Superb. Well, I'm looking forward to talking to you about Stomping Grounds tonight. So we both spoke off air, and we both watched the pre-show. Now, before we get into the match that was featured on the pre-show, there was a couple of good interviews. So Ricochet, first of all, joined the pre-show panel and called Samoa Joe a bully and relentless. And then Joe, Joe would do anything to keep his championship. Then we got a split screen with the camera on Samoa Joe backstage, who tells Ricochet that he's been here for a cup of coffee, referring to Ricochet, and that Ricochet knows that knows nothing about surviving in the WWE, and that he is not on Joe's level. And Joe says that there is no doubt that Ricochet is an amazing athlete, but that's not going to save him from the beating that Joe is going to give him. Joe finishes by saying that tonight Ricochet will sleep, but tonight will not be his night. So a really strong promo there from Joe. Then we go into an interview with Daniel Bryan and Rowan backstage. Now, first of all, we see Daniel Bryan going off on referee Charles Robinson, who accidentally walked into the shop before they were about to do the interview. So that was a little bit different and unplanned, I'm sure. Daniel Bryan then calls this type of disrespect that people have for tag team wrestling, and that the New Day treat the division as a joke. Bryan says that tonight himself and Rowan are not just defending the SmackDown Tag Team Championships, but tonight they are going to save the tag team division from people like Heavy Machinery, who, despite their wrestling accomplishments, just thrive on thrusting their hips and talking about having a great time. Bryan says that they are trying to save the tag team division from becoming a joke because they are the planet's champion, and that the Blue Collar Solid is no match for the champions fighting for the greater good. So I loved both these two promos. And you know what you're going to get with Daniel Bryan and Samoa Joe. Two very, very strong promos, two of the best in the business. But yeah, I thought that these were two strong highlights from the pre-show. What were your thoughts on these promos from Daniel Bryan and Samoa Joe?
Yeah, it's funny because when I saw the promo for Joe and for Ricochet, I was excited about it because I was like, they're actually going to give these guys a little bit of a spotlight here. And I was glad about that because I feel like sometimes the secondary titles sort of get lost in the shuffle with WWE. And Ricochet and Samoa Joe is the match I was looking most forward to. So that was really great. And when I saw Joe's promo, I was like, man, I really hope they don't just kill Ricochet here. Because I was pretty sure Joe was going to retain. But I was just hoping, I hope that Ricochet just doesn't get squashed and can at least have a good showing for himself. But Joe's great. I mean, I hope Joe gets a chance to have a world title feud, and he's awesome. So I thought that was great. In regards to Daniel Bryan, I mean, I was just excited because I knew they were in Washington. I knew the crowd was going to be for Bryan. I'm always thinking back to that night at the Slammies in 2013 when they did the Cena and Randy Orton kind of deal, and Daniel Bryan the crowd went nuts for him the whole night. And kind of the stuff he's doing with Rowan, I feel like is something similar to what he wanted to do with the Intercontinental title before he got hurt. He had always said he wanted to really kind of put more of a spotlight on the Intercontinental Championship, have that be the title that's defended every week on SmackDown and propel SmackDown up to that next level. So to see him be able to, be vocal about wanting to restore the prestige to the tag team division, I think is great.
Yeah, I do too. And I don't always watch the pre-show, but I think I will do more often, especially with those two promos. Hopefully we'll get more of the same in the future, but hopefully we'll get more of the same of the first match of the night. And it was on the pre-show, and it was for the WWE Cruiserweight Championship, and it was Akira Tozawa, Drew Gulak, and the new Cruiserweight champion, Tony Nese. Well, I say new, he won it at WrestleMania. But going into this match, what were your expectations, and do you watch 205 Live much?
I try to watch 205 Live the best I can. It's tough sometimes, especially, I think one of the pieces that is tough for me about 205 Live is that it's always on after SmackDown. Yeah. It's hard to, once SmackDown ends, turn on 205 Live and watch it live. But every time I've watched it, it's been great. I like a lot of the guys that are on 205 Live. I was telling you off air, I grew up here in the Long Island area, so Tony Nese has been a favorite of mine early on. During his days with the New York Wrestling Connection, Mikey Whipwreck School. And so I was really, every time I see them have matches, I feel like they kill it. They do a great job, especially when they're on the pre-show, when they get that chance to shine. I think back to the Fatal 4-Way at the Royal Rumble, and those guys came out and everyone was like, the 205 Live guys. And by the end, they're just going nuts for him and cheering for everything they did. Actually ended up being one of, obviously now Kento, but Hideo Itami's final matches with 205 Live. So, I love those guys. I think they always bring it, and whenever they're there for me, I'm like, all right, here we go. Let's strap in. They're going to be great.
So if you only caught the main show, I definitely urge you to go back and watch the pre-show, because this match was one of the highlights of the night. So I'll run through some of the key spots here. So Tony Nese gets the first 2 count of the match from a leg sweep, and then gets another one from a bridging German suplex on Gulak, whilst almost pinning Akira Tozawa at the same time with the roll-up. So that was quite an impressive double pinning combination there. The match goes to the outside with Nese nailing a super kick to the chin of Gulak, only to be caught with a dive through the ropes from Tozawa, before Tozawa crashes into Gulak with an impressive running cannonball off the ring apron, sending Gulak into the barriers at ringside. This match has started with a breakneck speed, and the fans in Tacoma, Washington are really into this action. Drew Gulak is having to save quite a lot of the pinfall attempts to save the match. Tozawa applies an octopus submission hold on Gulak until Nese breaks it up by suplexing Tozawa into Gulak. Gulak applies the Gulak on Nese, only to have the hold broken up with a high back senton from Tozawa, crashing down onto both Nese and Gulak in the centre of the ring. Gulak nails Tozawa with the superplex from the top rope. Nese misses a 450 splash, but has the presence of mind to drop Gulak hard down to the canvas before Tozawa comes in with the Shining Wizard, getting another close near fall for his troubles. So many close near falls in this match, so much quick action between these 3 wrestlers. The end of the match comes when Tozawa knocks Nese off the side of the ring apron with a running knee, allowing Drew Gulak to pick up Tozawa for a torture rack neck breaker to become the new WWE Cruiserweight champion. And that was a hell of a match. Like I said, it was at breakneck speed. Went 11 minutes 20 seconds. So and it maybe they could have given him another 5 minutes, but they didn't waste a certain second in this match at all. I'd love to know your thoughts on this pre-show match, because I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, it was great. And I think that one of the things that, I almost forget is when you think of Akira Tozawa, he shows up, he wins Cruiserweight Championship, ends up losing it within like a week back to Neville, and then kind of drifts into this comedy type role with Titus Worldwide. And you almost forget that, like, he is awesome in the ring. Like, he can just straight go. So I thought, he's great. And I love the finish here, because Gulak defeats Akira Tozawa. So now Tony Nese loses this belt that he's been going after for so long, and he's not even involved in the pinning combination. So it just sets up now, moving forward on 205 Live, there's reason to watch and kind of see how Tony Nese can try to get back at Drew Gulak and maybe set up a one-on-one at Extreme Rules or down the road, maybe towards SummerSlam.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people have been hoping for a Drew Gulak title reign for quite a while. He's not your typical cruiserweight. He doesn't fly. He's renowned for kind of keeping things grounded, being more of a mat-based wrestler. But I think he's going to add a different element to the game, different element to holding the belt. And we've seen quite a lot of him on NXT over recent months. And I think he's taken a bit more of a back to his kind of original gimmick, a bit more of a serious wrestler. instead of the kind of PowerPoint presentations. He's definitely showing us what he can do in the ring. We know that he can kind of do it on the mic, but now he's showing us what a great wrestler he is, and I'm really pleased that he's the new Cruiserweight champion. So we go into the main card now, and the first match of the night is the man, Becky Lynch, versus the lady, Lacey Evans. So we saw their first match back at Money in the Bank, where Becky had to defend her Raw and SmackDown championships back to back, first against Lacey and then the SmackDown championships against Charlotte, who Charlotte promptly lost the championship to Bayley that same night when Bayley cashed in. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of support, as you would expect, for Becky Lynch as she made her entrance. I think she's still massively over, but there's quite a lot of chatter online, Tommy, that Becky Lynch has kind of lost her shine slightly, that she's not kind of getting the reaction that she was before WrestleMania. Of course, she's not got Ronda Rousey to kind of spar with on Twitter at the moment. But what's your kind of thoughts on Becky Lynch's championship reign before this match with Lacey Evans?
I think the big issue with Becky's reign really has been that there hasn't really been that challenger to go after Becky, somebody that was built up to be a credible challenger to go after Becky when she first won the title. You mentioned Ronda Rousey, with her being kind of out of the picture and with Charlotte just being done many times. There really wasn't anybody, I feel like, who was ready to kind of step into that role, and so they tried with Lacey, but the problem with Lacey was she hadn't really been built up. She hadn't established that credibility. It's not entirely all of their fault. I mean, Ruby Riott ended up getting hurt. There's a couple other injuries here and there. Nia Jax is injured. But at the end of the day, I feel like having that lack of challenger to go against Becky and having somebody that the crowd could really get into in a match people can really kind of eat up, I think has hurt Becky a little bit. Not so much that it's not. I think people are still like, oh, it's the man. People are excited. But I think people are a little like, but she's, fighting again with Lacey, who she's, just beat at Money in the Bank and pretty decisively beat at Money in the Bank. So I think that they've kind of struggled with finding the right challenger for Becky coming out of her big win.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I like Lacey Evans. I like her character. I liked her in NXT, and I think that they've done a fairly good job of building her character since she's been up to the main roster. But I think she's still a bit green in the ring, and fans notice it from a mile off. So I think that's one thing she needs to brush up on. But we'll crack on with the match anyway. So as I said, there's plenty of support for Becky as she gets this match underway. Becky drops Lacey with a wrecking ball drop kick to start the match, sending Lacey to the outside. Lacey then gator rolls Becky over to the ring post, where she pulls Becky across the ring post before getting a 2 count in the middle of the ring. So going to work on a kind of midsection and Becky's ribs early on here. Lacey then goes after Becky's injured ribs, and there's loud "you can't wrestle" chants from the fans. And as we alluded to earlier, some of the fans are kind of picking up that she's a little bit green in the ring. Lacey powers her way out of a disarmer, just managing to reach the bottom rope with her left foot. Becky gives Lacey a taste of her own medicine by stuffing the Southern Belle's handkerchief down her throat before dropping Evans with a series of clotheslines and a running forearm smash. Becky gets a 2 count from a Bexploder, but misses an attempted leg drop from the second rope. Lacey connects with a second rope cutter for a 2 count, which I thought was quite an impressive move there. However, Becky is quick to react and pulls Lacey down hard from the top rope before quickly applying the disarmer, causing Lacey to tap, and Becky Lynch retains her Raw Women's Championship just after 11 minutes 20 seconds for this one. The match seemed to get better the longer it went, and the right person won, but it is kind of 2 defeats back to back for Lacey Evans against Becky Lynch here. So she lost, of course, at Money in the Bank, which was her official kind of main roster debut, and she hasn't had many matches in between, so this is, you could say, kind of her second important match, losing again. Obviously we're going to be talking a little bit more about Lacey Evans as the show progresses, more towards the main event, of course, but 2 back-to-back defeats to Becky Lynch here. Where do you think that leaves Lacey Evans as far as a credible championship contender for the future?
Yeah, it's definitely tough, and I mean, it's tough for Lacey moving forward, and I think a part of that has to be, yes, she is green in the ring, as you said, and I think the problem right now is that the bar for women's wrestling in WWE has just been raised and raised and raised as everybody comes up. There's great women's wrestling on NXT UK, and there's been tons of great women's wrestling all the way up and down the card on the main roster, both Raw and SmackDown, up until them being the WrestleMania main event this past year. So I feel like now Lacey's kind of being put into this role that, is probably a little too big for her right now. And with 2 back-to-back defeats, I mean, it is really tough for her moving forward. Obviously she plays a role later in the show, which we'll get to. And I was really almost hoping it would be someone else, just because I'm like, how can we now take her serious when Becky's beaten her decisively 2 times? But I did actually think this match was pretty good, though. I think I like her using kind of the mandible claw little homage to Mick Foley there, and Becky, rather. And, I think, again, as you said, the right person won, but I hope this isn't the end for Lacey Evans, but it's going to be a tough road, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that there's... we'll talk more about Lacey later on, of course, but it would be interesting to see if she's used as a championship contender for the next pay-per-view, but we shall see on that one. Then in a backstage interview, Paul Heyman is seen coming out of Baron Corbin's locker room, and he's asked if he will be the special guest referee for tonight's main event, Baron Corbin versus Seth Rollins for the Universal Championship, of course, and we'll be seeing Brock Lesnar tonight. Paul responds by asking if the WWE Champion Kofi Kingston and the Universal Champion Seth Rollins are both here tonight, and if they are both here, then that also presents an opportunity for his client Brock Lesnar. Baron Corbin then comes out of his dressing room and is asked in a backstage interview if he has chosen his special guest referee yet. Corbin says that he doesn't need any favours for tonight, and once he has beaten Seth Rollins to become the new Universal Champion, then he'll worry about Brock Lesnar. Like I say, at this stage, we don't know who the special guest referee is. On Monday Night Raw, I think it was this past Monday, we saw Elias get beat down with a chair from Seth. We saw EC3 get beat down from Seth Rollins with a chair. So what did you think of this little segment with Paul Heyman and Baron Corbin?
Well, one thing I actually think they found a little bit of an interesting way to kind of keep the mystique of Brock Lesnar alive throughout the year now, with him having this Money in the Bank briefcase. Because yes, they've teased that he's going to cash in a lot, and he doesn't end up cashing in, which is kind of frustrating. But at the same time, they always have the idea that you don't know when he's going to show up. And I think him coming to a show like Money in the Bank, which isn't one of the big 4 shows, means that maybe he will show up on a Stomping Grounds, and maybe he could have showed up. So I like this. It kept the intrigue alive, and it kept that idea in the back of your head that, hey, Brock is still out there with the briefcase. And now every one of those title matches that happen, whether it be Kofi's match or Seth's match, it's like, hey, is this going to be finally the time when Brock comes out and cashes in? So I thought I thought it was cool, and I thought that Paul had a chance to be that referee. So I started getting a little excited about that too.
Yeah, definitely. And like I say, Kofi Kingston and Seth need to have one eye on, kind of constantly looking over their shoulder, you could say, because Brock Lesnar, like I say, might appear on any show going forward. But fun little segment there. Moving on to the next match, Sami Zayn teaming up with his longtime friend and former rival Kevin Owens against the New Day, Big E and Xavier Woods, of course. So this match, I didn't really have any high expectations on this match going into it, but I was pleasantly surprised, Tommy, to be honest with you. Just to go through some of the key spots, Kevin Owens promptly starts the match with a super kick, sending Big E off the ring apron and to the outside. Then he super kicks Xavier Woods. Owens connects with a senton from the top turnbuckle and gets an early 2 count. Sami Zayn gets tagged in and hits a blue thunder bomb, and he gets a 2 count. Kevin Owens then nails a frog splash and gets another 2 count. All of this within the first minute. So the first minute was blistering pace. It really was breathtaking action. This match started at such a fantastic pace, with both Zayn and Owens each taking turns on attacking Xavier Woods in their half of the ring. Some really good, clever tag team action here between those two. Woods finally tags in Big E, who gets a close near fall on Zayn with a big splash. Sami Zayn then drives Big E into the ring post before delivering a helluva kick to the face of Woods. Owens connects with a pop-up powerbomb for a close near fall of his own. Big E then delivers a huge spear through the ropes, taking Sami Zayn off the ring apron and to the floor on the outside. Woods then attempts a top rope maneuver, which is blocked by Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens hits a stunner and then pins Xavier Woods 1, 2, 3 using his stunner. So that match went just over 11 minutes, and that was another really fun match. Like I say, I love the pace of this. We've had 3 excellent back-to-back matches so far, and the heel duo came out on top on this one, Tommy, and there was no shenanigans, there was no dirty play. It was just a straight match between a heel team and a babyface team. And Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens won this match. I thought this match was excellent. What did you think?
Yeah, it's funny because I also almost forgot it was on the show. I don't know if I just kind of lost the idea that it was going to be on the show, but then suddenly it came out, and we do. I think you're in that predictions league that I'm in. So when I saw it on the card, I was like, I completely forgot that was on there, and then I was like, this should be pretty good. And I love Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens together. They came out together, and Kevin Owens gave him the kiss on the cheek, and they kissed Sami on the cheek when they were coming down. And together, they're just great. They're always fun to watch. Every single time Big E does that spear through the rope, I can't help but cringe and just get so scared that he's not going to get up from it because it always looks so ugly. But really good stuff. I think all four of those guys are so good in the ring, and I like that Kevin Owens is utilizing the stunner. I think it's really cool. So, and again, it was good to see they got a clean win, and as you said, no shenanigans, and it was good. They solidified them with the tag victory over the New Day as, if they want to, having those guys be back in the tag team division on SmackDown.
Definitely. And as much as I'd like to see Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn have singles success, I'm very happy with them teaming up again as a tag team, and let's see where that takes them. Then we see Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss backstage as Alexa prepares for her match against Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship later on in the night. Then we get a match for the United States Championship, Ricochet versus current champion Samoa Joe. So this has a very fresh and exciting feel. I don't think we've seen these two wrestle on the main roster yet. And Ricochet, of course, earned his US title shot after winning a Fatal 5-Way on Monday Night Raw this past Monday. Tommy, going into this match, what were your expectations and who were you rooting for? I mean, this is a match between two very credible, very experienced wrestlers who the fans enjoy for their wrestling capabilities. What were your thoughts going into this one?
Well, I was really excited when this first happened. When Ricochet won that Fatal 5-Way, I was pumped up because going into that match, I think he was in there with Braun and with Bobby Lashley, and obviously the Miz. And I just immediately thought it was going to, someone else was in there too, but I really thought Braun was going to be the one to take this. I thought they were kind of building towards Braun and Samoa Joe. So when Braun got eliminated, I was like, oh wow, this is going to be a great match. And so when Ricochet ends up getting the win, I'm like, wow, this is a big test for Ricochet. It's great to see that he's, getting a bit of a spotlight on him, and he's getting a pay-per-view title match. So I was really excited about it. Ricochet, to me, kind of feels like he's in the mid-2000s role of someone like an Evan Bourne or a Jeff Hardy at the time, before Jeff Hardy obviously became the world champion. And I was like, he could really fit that role. A guy who goes out there, kills it, gets the crowd really excited, and now he's got a chance to go for the U.S. title against a guy like Samoa Joe. It was the match that on paper I was looking most forward to.
Definitely. So in this match, Joe was his usual dominant self in the early going, with Joe getting an early 2 count from an enziguri in the corner. Joe gets another 2 count after yanking Ricochet from the ropes, transitioning into a power bomb. So that was quite an impressive move. Normally you see that and Ricochet would land on his feet, but this time Joe caught him and transitioned into a seated power bomb. Ricochet gets a second wind and launches himself over the top rope and onto his opponent with a Fosbury flop dive to the outside. Joe ducks a top rope attack from Ricochet to deliver another powerbomb, getting a 2 count. Joe then nails Ricochet with a solid German suplex, followed by a wicked clothesline, turning Ricochet inside out and gets another 2 count from that move. Ricochet then ducks another clothesline from Joe, allowing him to connect with a knee to the face before delivering a 630. He hooks Joe's legs and gets the pinfall victory, and we have a new United States champion in Ricochet. So we're getting some really good action tonight, Tommy, and this was another great match. Ricochet took a beating from Joe. He did take his licks from Joe throughout this match. But Ricochet was still able to put on a show for the fans and to demonstrate what a fantastic wrestler he is, what great high-flying moves he does. And I think Ricochet has kind of matured into a bit of an all-round performer, to be honest with you. I think his character is growing. He's getting a little bit more confident on the mic, but he's letting his work do the talking in the ring, of course. Then we see him go backstage where he's congratulated by an array of WWE superstars, including Seth Rollins, Charlotte Flair, Heavy Machinery. I was really thrilled to see Ricochet win here and get his first kind of main roster championship belt, and of course he won the North American belt on NXT, of course. He even gets congratulated by Triple H, which I thought was a nice touch and got a bit of a pop from the audience, you could hear. A really fun match. Once again, fast-paced, good action, two fantastic wrestlers. I'd love to know your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I thought it was an absolute star-making performance for Ricochet. When he hit the 630, my fear was like, oh my God, they're going to make Joe kick out of the 630. That's his finish. And then he got the pin, and I was just like, I couldn't believe that they gave him the title. Like, it just felt like, wow, everything's kind of changed for this guy. He went from he lost to Robert Roode a couple of weeks ago on Raw. Then he was kind of exchanging wins with Cesaro during their really underrated kind of back and forth matches on Raw. And so for him to come out and get a big win over Joe, and then they really even built it up even more by having everybody standing in the back there to congratulate him. He gets the hug from Triple H. And it's funny because you're right, Triple H gets a huge pop. I think people forget that he's at every show. So whenever he's shown, it's like, oh crap, Triple H is here, But one of the things I really loved about it was Rollins was on Twitter and he's talking about how WWE is the best company and, kind of riling up, the Twitter fans and all that. But it was cool to see that he was really there kind of leading the locker room in cheering Ricochet, because it really presented him as, not only is he tweeting about these things, but he really is watching the other matches. He is there kind of as that locker room leader, and they presented that by having him be the first guy ready to congratulate Ricochet as he came through the curtain. So I love that. So that was really good.
Yeah, and it does show kind of a sense of pride that the wrestlers have. And of course, they probably hear just as much as we do the criticism that the main roster wrestling and action and superstars and storylines get from the public on the internet. And they know, because they're all on Twitter, they're all on Facebook and Instagram. They see firsthand the criticism that a lot of them get, a lot of the matches or shows get. So they take a lot of pride in what they do. And I'm sure that they want to turn things around and want to turn public opinion around, especially with the new kids on the block, AEW doing so well with their first pay-per-view with Double or Nothing, of course, and there being so much hype about All Out selling out within 15 minutes, which is fantastic for them. But they take themselves as serious performers. They want to be taken seriously by the fans, and I think this added a bit of credibility to Ricochet's win and a bit of camaraderie, amongst the wrestlers backstage. And I liked this touch, this little backstage congratulation for Ricochet. But like I say, hopefully, I think we have seen gradually over the last few weeks the product concentrate more on kind of the action instead of kind of silly shenanigans, and hopefully that'll be the start of things to come. And as I mentioned on the 50th episode of the podcast, with Fox coming in and SmackDown going over to Fox in October, that's going to be a TV channel that's going to expect something more sports based, something that's going to focus more on the wrestling and the action in the ring, and less about the kind of silly storylines and unnecessary character development backstage. We've seen some unnecessary skits involving the Revival over the last month or so, which has not done them any favors, although once again they are the Raw Tag Team Champions. Not that they were anywhere to be seen on this pay-per-view, but hopefully there's I just want the competition of AEW to maybe kickstart WWE into giving us fans something more to look forward to each week. But let's move into talking of tag team wrestling, the SmackDown Tag Team Championship match. And of course, you've got the current champions, Daniel Bryan and Eric Rowan versus Heavy Machinery. So Heavy Machinery, they've been getting a bit of a push recently. Of course, they're involved in this tag team title match against Daniel Bryan and Rowan. So there's huge Daniel Bryan chants, as you would imagine, from the fans in Tacoma, Washington. I think Daniel Bryan kept the smirk down from his face, but you could tell that he was really pleased with the response that he was getting from the fans in Tacoma. He was managing to hide it, but you could tell that he was chuffed with the reaction that he was getting. Daniel Bryan and Eric Rowan take control of this match, and at one point Bryan wraps Tucker's left leg around the ring post, so that's always a good spot to get a bit of heat on the heels. He does that twice before there's a couple of heavy elbow and big splashes for a close near fall from Eric Rowan. Otis then gets tagged in, where he gets drilled with a few running drop kicks from Daniel Bryan in the corner, which is his usual spot, of course, until Otis turns Bryan's attack into a powerbomb. So that was their first bit of offense there. Bear with us, sorry. Otis then becomes imperious to pain, so he kind of hulks up, kind of modelling the Hulk Hogan Hulk up there that he used to do very famously in the 80s and the 90s. And so he hulked up, but there was no leg drop in sight, Tommy. It was the Caterpillar, and the Caterpillar elbow, of course. Rowan then breaks up the pinning attempt on his tag team partner. Tucker then goes for a moonsault, only finding canvas, so a pretty impressive spot for such a big man there. Then we get kind of the war of the big men, with Otis and Eric Rowan going to war in the center of the ring before Heavy Machinery go for their compactor. However, Daniel Bryan pulls on the top rope, sending Tucker Knight to the outside. Tucker recovers enough to climb to the top turnbuckle, and he nails Eric Rowan with a flying crossbody. So once again, we've seen a moonsault, now a flying crossbody from the top turnbuckle from Tucker Knight. A lot of attention in this tag team normally goes to Otis, but I think this match certainly demonstrated what a fantastic wrestler Tucker is. So a lot of props to him. And now let's see. Tucker then goes back into the ring after hitting the flying crossbody, but he's quickly rolled up by Daniel Bryan for the pinfall, and retains the tag team championship, the SmackDown Tag Team Championship, for his team on 14 minutes. So this was an entertaining match, and for those that haven't had a lot of exposure to Heavy Machinery, I think they would have been really surprised at the reaction that Otis tends to get whenever he comes in the ring, and his kind of Caterpillar, which seems to be his most over move, unfortunately. But Tucker Knight really demonstrated what he was capable of tonight, and props to him. But the heel tag team of Daniel Bryan and Eric Rowan went over in this match, retained their SmackDown Tag Team Championships. But this was another really fun match. What were your thoughts on this one, Tommy?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I think it was a kind of another star-making performance, this time in defeat for Heavy Machinery. It's funny, I always gauge on how good a match is by if my wife starts to pay attention to it. She's always kind of watching along, but she's like kind of doing other things. And when we saw Heavy Machinery, we met them at Access just because they were at the table with Sami Zayn, and they were acting silly and goofy and whatever. Halfway through the match, she was like, "These guys are really good." And I too, I've seen them a bunch of times in NXT, and I don't think those guys have ever really had the opportunity to go out and just have a really good match. And what better opponent to do it with than Daniel Bryan, who I feel like I could probably have a good match with. He's that good. But I thought that they looked great. I love Daniel Bryan coming out, and like you said, he had kind of hid the smirk a little, but at least he wasn't coming out there and talking about running down the town and trying to turn the crowd against him, because it never was going to happen. There was even a time where he gets up on the top rope when he first came in, and I was like, is he going to do the S chant? Because I was like, that would be some crazy moment if he had done it. But I like that those guys retained the belts. I like that I always pop whenever he pulls out the small package. He'll give a shout out to it sometimes, because he used to do it in Ring of Honor, where he would wrap somebody in a small package and put them in that hold, and they couldn't get out of the small package. Wow. So that was kind of his move there. And he brought it up earlier this year too, kind of going against AJ Styles with the Mr. Small Package stuff. So good to see Bryan get the win with the small package, especially because it looked like he kind of weaseled his way into another victory. And then I think Heavy Machinery didn't lose anything by taking the defeat here.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind seeing a match between these two teams again in the future. I really enjoyed Heavy Machinery in this match, and I've always been a bit of a fan. I've seen them wrestle a few times live, and I think not only are they capable of doing the comedy stuff, but as we saw in this match, they're definitely capable of doing the wrestling in between as well. So moving into our next championship match, sticking with SmackDown. This one's for the SmackDown Women's Championship, and of course you've got current champion Bayley going up against Alexa Bliss, and she was accompanied to the ring by Nikki Cross. So this match started to pick up really after Alexa pulled Bayley into the ring post on the outside, and despite the injured arm, Bayley recovers enough to get a 2 count after a back suplex on Alexa. Bayley then connects with a sunset flip bomb into the turnbuckles, sending Alexa to the outside. So that move was pretty cool. The match flows to the outside, then Bayley follows up with a dive to the outside, but it appears that Alexa pulled or pushed Nikki Cross into the path of Bayley as Bayley was coming through the ropes. Alexa then delivers a sunset bomb of her own onto Bayley on the outside. Alexa attempts a twisted a twisted bliss to win the match, finding only knees on her way down. Bayley executes her belly to Bayley and hooks the leg and gets a 1-2-3 to retain her SmackDown Championship. So now the thing that stood out to me in this match was the relationship between Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross and how the dynamic might end up between these two. Alexa definitely pushed Nikki into the path of Bayley by the looks of it. Well, certainly the replays showed that as Bayley came diving through the ropes. Then Nikki came into the ring towards the end of the match that appeared to cause a bit of a distraction for Alexa, causing Bayley to hit her belly to Bayley for the win. So a bit of kind of a storyline dynamic going on between Nikki Cross and Alexa here. But I thought that Alexa and Bayley put on a good match, and Bayley retains. So what were your thoughts on this SmackDown Women's Championship match?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. The kind of the dynamic between Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss is actually something I think is pretty cool. It's almost like a kind of weird, like, new age rock and sock connection in a way. With these two, with Nikki Cross a little bit zany and Alexa Bliss, prim and proper. At some point Alexa's going to turn on Nikki Cross. So I wonder if they'll eventually set up a three-way between them. Maybe Nikki gets the belt, and then that's what makes Alexa kind of go off on that. But I thought the match was good. Really good to see Alexa back in the ring because, they had the 365 special after that and showed how Alexa really was really banged up. And I don't think that we knew kind of all the injuries that she was dealing with the concussions and everything. So good to see her back in there, and good to see Bayley getting that focus again, because I think that they really got away from that. So it's good to see the kind of rehabbing the Bayley character with the Women's Championship.
Yeah, like you said, it's lovely to see Nikki Cross getting a little bit more TV time, getting a bit more exposure in a fairly high-profile storyline, and no doubt we'll see kind of one of the either Nikki turn on Alexa or Alexa turn on Nikki fairly soon. But so that could be a very interesting program when that happens. Then we get a recap from the latest happenings between R-Truth and Drake Maverick and the ongoing shenanigans with the 24/7 Championship. And this has to be one of the most entertaining parts of WWE programming each week, Tommy. Have you been as entertained by the kind of ongoing 24/7 shenanigans as I have? If you've been keeping tabs on Drake Maverick's Instagram and Twitter pages recently, you'll be seeing kind of everything that happened around his wedding and the aftermath, and Drake feeling pretty down on himself. Possibly it looks like his marriage, his new marriage is in the bin, and he's no longer 24-hour champion. So let's say this along with the Firefly Funhouse has been two things definitely to keep us hooked on a Monday. But what are your thoughts on this 24/7 championship?
Yeah, I love it. I love the stuff they've done with it. And anytime you feel like you need to pay attention to stuff that's outside of the regular shows, because you never know when it's going to happen, I think is really great. And Drake Maverick, give it up for this guy. This guy comes in. Clearly, they probably didn't see much in him as a performer, in that they made him a general manager and they made him a manager. And he's gone out of his way to really get himself over here and really get himself over in a big way. And it was funny because, he kept posting things and there kept being pictures leaked of, him at his bachelor party, him with the bridal party posing for photos. It was almost like, are they going to do something? They even showed him with King Maxwell, Matt Hardy's son, who was there. And so then people were wondering if maybe that was going to happen. And then when eventually R-Truth does come, and his wife, the lady he married, was in the Mae Young Classic, which I was not aware of. So she's a performer as well. So the idea that these guys legitimately got married and allowed WWE to take a couple minutes away from their wedding day to film this is pretty great, especially with the added wrinkle that Braun Strowman was a groomsman, but then when WWE filmed the little piece, they had Strowman nowhere to be found, because it would have made no sense to have Strowman standing next to EC3. So, and then EC3 with the cup too as the extra little added thing, I thought was great. 24/7 stuff is great. I always get a kick out of it, though.
Yeah, well, I do, and like I say, some of the numbers of views that it's getting on YouTube, are you talking 2, 3, 4 million views? Some of these clips with R-Truth and Drake Maverick, and it's entertaining stuff. I don't think that anybody thought that it would be as entertaining as it was. I'm guessing that Vince McMahon is getting a kick out of it because he loves the comedy. But like you say, it's down to the individuals. The individuals, Drake Maverick and Jinder Mahal and EC3 and R-Truth, they're all making it work. And obviously they're putting a lot of thought into kind of the various skits and shenanigans that they're going to do on a week-to-week basis. It kind of looks like, it's got a lot of it is possibly their ideas. obviously Drake had to be in on kind of the wedding 24/7 cash in. Yeah, and I think, for so long we've said that the WWE need to make new stars, and this kind of scenario with 24/7 championship belt appears to be doing that. Although it wasn't part of the original plan, I'm sure, but it seems to be doing very well, certainly for certain individuals. And like you said, Tommy, I'm really, really happy that that Drake is getting a bit of a spotlight and getting a bit of attention, because he's such a talented guy. I don't think he'll ever be taken seriously as a world title contender, but for things like this, I think it's made for a character like Drake Maverick, and to have a foe like Ron Killings, R-Truth. I think the two play off of one another very, very well. So I can't wait to see what's in store this week on Monday or Tuesday. I'm sure we'll see much more from these two. So I'm thoroughly entertained at the moment. But keeping with the wrestling action, our next match is Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre. So we've seen these two wrestle before, and of course they had a match. You witnessed it in person at the MetLife Stadium in April, WrestleMania 35. But since then, Shane McMahon has kind of come into the fold and come into the feud, and we get a full recap of the build-up to this match. And it's essentially been kind of a story of the ongoing feud between Roman Reigns and Shane McMahon more than it has Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre, certainly over recent months anyway. And there's no doubt about it, whether you like him or whether you hate him, Roman Reigns, he got one hell of a reception as he came out for this match. Where do you stand on kind of Roman Reigns? Are you one that would boo him, or are you one that would cheer him? Where do you stand on Roman Reigns?
For a while I was, him being in all the WrestleMania main events was getting to a point where it was like enough, but I don't know. I don't mind Roman so much, especially I almost feel like the hate towards him sometimes is a little over the top. I'll never forget him at a VIP Access signing and a whole bunch of guys screaming, Roman sucks at the guy at his own Access VIP signing. And I'm like, that kind of stuff is sometimes the hate is just so extreme that it's so over the top. I think that certainly ever since he's returned, I think the booking of him has actually been pretty good. They've kind of kept him out of the world title picture. They've seen that he's allowing Rollins to have the spotlight because that's his boy and that's his friend, and he's kind of taking a little bit of a back seat. And it's been kind of cool to see him doing that. Going over to SmackDown, he'll be kind of, I'm sure, one of the big focal points of that show as it comes to Fox. So I feel like right now, especially after everything that he's gone through, and now being very vocal about wanting to use his own personal experiences to motivate others and to be a good, I guess, kind of an idol to these folks who might be going through something similar. It's tough to think about folks booing him. That said, I'm pretty sure Philly, for Extreme Rules, it could get ugly, because Philly historically has not been kind to Roman at all.
No, very true, very true. Before the match even started, Drew exits the ring and meets Roman Reigns on the rampway where they start fighting. The match does officially start, and Reigns clotheslines McIntyre over the top rope before launching himself over the rope with a huge dive. Now, it's very reminiscent of WrestleMania 25, if you remember, when The Undertaker took that massive dive to the outside against Shawn Michaels, and Michaels pulled the cameraman in the way. The cameraman did a dreadful job of trying to catch Undertaker, but the dive from Roman Reigns was very reminiscent, and a bit of a hard landing from Reigns. But then there's so that was very impressive. This match should have been billed as a handicap match, in my opinion, because Shane McMahon was involved all the way through this. Getting involved behind the referee's back at every opportunity. Drew gets a 2 count from a spine buster, then gets a second 2 count from a very impressive snap suplex. So that was raw power, because I think that Reigns was virtually on his knees when Drew powered him up for the suplex. Reigns then gets ready to deliver a Superman punch to McIntyre when Shane jumps up onto the ring apron, causing Shane to be on the end of Roman's Superman punch instead. Reigns then exits the ring, runs around and connects with a second Superman punch to Shane on the outside. McIntyre then catches Reigns with an impressive kind of like a reverse Alabama slam onto the ring announcer's table, which crashes the ring announcer's table, and then before getting a 2 count back on the inside of the ring with a sidewalk slam. McIntyre gets another close near fall from an awesome superplex from the top turnbuckle. That was pretty special. Shane then prevents a 3 count after a spear from Reigns by dragging the referee to the outside. Shane then connects with a coast to coast with the referee kind of out of the action, nailing Roman Reigns in the corner before shoving the referee back into the ring, with Reigns just kicking out before the 3 count. Reigns ends the match by throwing Shane over the top rope before spearing McIntyre in the center of the ring, hooking the leg and getting the 1, 2, 3. So this was a well-booked match, a well-produced match. I really enjoyed it. I thought that, as I said, it was very well-booked. I thought McIntyre looked very strong. I think he had his moments throughout the match. Shane played his role very well also, but the big dog came out on top. And although, Roman Reigns winning might not be popular with everybody, I think he deserved it, certainly in this match. And I think all 3 individuals played their part very well, and it was a very entertaining match. But what are your thoughts on this one, Tommy?
Yeah, so I'm probably in the real minority of folks, but I'm actually a huge Shane McMahon fan. So I think that everything he does, I think he does everything really well. I think that, I've kind of enjoyed this push of him becoming like a major focal point of the show, even though I know a lot of people hate it. But, the only thing I'd say is Drew, I feel like this kind of became his role. I feel like this was going to probably be Elias's role, and it feels like somewhere along the way they shifted it, and it went from Elias to Drew. And I almost feel like Drew, I feel like he's so good. Like, I feel like this guy has everything. And would have been nice to see him get the win here, but that's not the role that he's playing here. Like, he's kind of the second fiddle in a way to Shane, so it doesn't really make sense for him to also get the win over Roman. So it makes sense for Roman to get the win, and now he could focus on Shane thereafter.
So I think it's announced later on in this pay-per-view that there's going to be a handicap match on Monday Night Raw. Now, I don't know if you've seen Monday Night Raw yet, but there's going to be a handicap match between Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre teaming up to take on Roman Reigns. So that's certainly a match to keep the feud going. It looks like the feud between these three are going to continue, and there's going to be more twists and turns in store, I'm sure. But moving into our kind of semi-final match of the evening, it's for the WWE Championship, Tommy. Kofi Kingston versus Dolph Ziggler. So I want to know kind of your opinion on Kofi as a champion. I mean, of course, you saw that amazing match that he had with Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 35, and that was possibly, one of, if not the highlights of the whole show, to be honest with you. But give us your thoughts on Kofi Kingston as a WWE champion. I think he's kind of been quite strong as a champion, but more importantly, I also want your thoughts on Dolph Ziggler as well. I know he's recently come back into the fray, I've never been a massive Dolph Ziggler fan. He's never quite clicked for me, but he seems to be doing quite well in his rivalry with Kofi Kingston. Give us your thoughts on these two going into this match for the championship.
Yeah, so I think one of the things with Kofi is that he's been presented as somebody who's been a tag team guy, almost like on that B level type of kind of the mid card, I guess, before becoming a huge, getting the huge win at WrestleMania, which I think was the highlight of all of WrestleMania this year, and getting the title. And I feel like he needed at that point to get into feuds with a Randy Orton, with AJ Styles, with guys that were already established, and beat all of those guys, have decisive victories over those guys to really propel that, hey, now this guy is a main event type guy. He's done that. He's had a couple of good matches with Kevin Owens, and Owens obviously is a former champ. But the problem with Dolph is that Dolph, I don't think, is on that level. I don't think Dolph's been presented as on that level for so long. It's almost reminiscent of when Dean Ambrose won the title. And Ambrose was the champ and the face of SmackDown. And then going into SummerSlam, out of nowhere, Dolph Ziggler returned and won the #1 contender. And it was Dolph Ziggler against Dean Ambrose. And I feel like it just kind of brought Dean down to Dolph's level, as opposed to now Dean established as this top guy and bringing someone to his level. So I feel like Kofi needs a couple of I hope that after this match, he kind of moves on to other opponents. Maybe like aforementioned Randy Orton, or maybe Samoa Joe, someone like that. Because I think he needs some stronger opponents to really solidify himself as a top champion moving forward.
Yeah, and to give credit to Dolph Ziggler, I think that the build up to this match and some of the promos on SmackDown leading up to this match have been quite intense. He has kind of added this kind of extra element of intensity in his promos. Let's get on with the match anyway. So Being inside a steel cage, we haven't mentioned that element of this match yet. So it was a championship match in a steel cage. It always adds an extra kind of element. Almost becomes the third match, the third man in the match, I should say. On the 7-minute mark, however, Kofi starts to climb the cage, only to leap from the cage onto the top rope and then onto Dolph Ziggler down below with a flying crossbody. The two then fight on top of the cage, with Kofi using his own body weight to keep Ziggler from leaving the cage. Kofi connects with an SOS for a close near fall. Dolph applies a knee bar, which Kofi escapes from by dragging himself literally up the cage, clawing his way up the cage. But Kofi falls back down towards the ring and he's hit with a superplex, nearly sending Kofi, a super kick, nearly sending Kofi out of the ring. Dolph gets a 2 count from a zigzag. Dolph is close to make an escape through the cage door on a couple of occasions and nearly gets to exit after nailing Kofi with a super kick. But when Kofi notices that Dolph is close to exiting the cage door, Kofi then gets up, launches himself over the top of Dolph Ziggler through the top and middle rope and then lands on the outside to win the match. That was a fantastic spot, a great way to end the match, quite a unique way to end the match. I think only possibly Kofi Kingston could win a cage match in that sort of style, because we've seen these kind of fantastic ways of escape and elimination at Royal Rumbles, etc. And this was kind of another example of how agile and how super athletic Kofi Kingston is. But this ended the match on the 20-minute mark, Tommy. I thought all in all it was quite an entertaining match. I thought that the cage added quite a bit of drama to it, and Dolph Ziggler did nearly get to exit the ring once or twice to win the championship, but that Kofi Kingston element to win the match at the very end, yes, he retains over Dolph Ziggler. And what are your thoughts on this one? I thought both wrestlers certainly put in a great shift.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And you're always gonna have a good match. I feel like when those guys are in there together. I think both of them have solid matches, and now if they want to, now they could keep this going now with Dolph Ziggler's "It Should Have Been Me" thing. I thought the finish was so unique. I thought the finish was great, and as you said, very few people can really pull that off. But someone like Kofi, who's had tons of great Royal Rumble near fall misses and stuff, really fits in well with his character. And it'll be interesting to kind of see where it goes from here. I love the finish, though. It was really unique and could have absolutely gone wrong, right? If he misses up and he ends up banging into Dolph, Dolph could roll out of the ring and easily win the match there. So, but great timing, great moment, and it kind of just continues to build that frustration from the Dolph character that, like, all these things keep happening that he feels like should be going to him. And again, something doesn't go his way. So really good storytelling and a good match.
Definitely. Then we get an advert for Extreme Rules, which is the next WWE pay-per-view, and it's taking place in just 3 weeks' time. So between Super Showdown, Stomping Grounds, and Extreme Rules, I think you're talking a space of a month, but a month to 5 weeks between 3 pay-per-views. But that should be. It's always a fun pay-per-view, Extreme Rules, with the various gimmick matches, and it'll be interesting to see how that card lines up in the coming 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the show itself. But looking into the main event now, Tommy, and we've got Seth Rollins versus Baron Corbin with the Universal Championship on the line. Now, in the build-up to this match, we've seen Rollins take out several WWE superstars who were contenders to be the special guest referee for this main event match. All at the hands of Seth Rollins and the steel chair last week, of course. Now, before this match, people were speculating about who the guest referee might be. Could it be Brock Lesnar? Could it be Paul Heyman? Would it be somebody else? But I know we spoke briefly about this earlier, Tommy. Who did you kind of think it might be? Who are your thoughts on who might be the special guest referee ahead of this championship match?
So going in, I really thought that was going to be their way they'd bring back Bray Wyatt. I thought Bray was going to be. I had a friend who went to Raw and bumped into Bray in the gym, and he sent me a little video of him with Bray, and so I knew Bray was in town, in and around the buildings, kind of planning his return. So I thought, okay, if they didn't do it on Raw, it's going to happen at the pay-per-view. But I didn't necessarily think that would really make the most sense for his character. So about halfway through the show, I was thinking it was going to be Heyman, and then they'd keep teasing the Lesnar cash in, and maybe that would lead to Corbin even winning the belt. But my brother-in-law who I was watching with said, Rollins has made it clear he's going to hit someone with a chair if they come out and interfere. So it's got to be a woman here because he's not going to hit a woman with the chair. So from that perspective, it made a lot of sense. I was just at that point hoping for someone like Shayna Baszler or Rhea Ripley to come in, and now you could establish that next challenger for Becky.
Yeah, so some might consider, like I say, this not to be a very smart move, but Baron Corbin announced that it would be Lacey Evans as a special guest referee. So I'm sure, it got a bit of a shock reaction from everybody in the audience. But I consider this a bit of a smart move. Once again, Seth Rollins come down to the ring with a steel chair, not likely to hit a woman with a steel chair, of course, like he did and went to town on various wrestlers on Monday night. But I also thought this was a genius heel move, to be honest with you, giving the fans even more of a reason to hate both Evans and Baron Corbin during this match. So I think it gave it that extra heel heat. Yes, like I say, not popular opinion with the wrestling purists, but definitely kind of a good heel tactic in my opinion. So during the match, Corbin attacks Rollins from behind before Seth attacks with a steel chair. Corbin continues to punish Rollins until Rollins connects with his sling blade, a blockbuster, and a big dive through the ropes. Rollins connects with a high knee before hooking the leg of Corbin's, but Lacey Evans gives a very, very slow 2 count. So I think this is going to be the theme of the match. Rollins then drives Corbin through the announcer's table with a powerbomb, followed by a very slow 10 count from Lacey Evans. Lacey then changes the rule of the match to have a no count out rule. Rollins then connects with a fantastic frog splash, getting some really good height there before Lacey pulling out of the 3 count by faking an arm injury. So we know that she was had to submit via the disarmer from earlier on in the evening from Becky Lynch, but feigning a bit of an arm injury, not going down on the 3 count here. Lacey then changes the rules once again to include a no DQ, allowing Corbin to utilise the steel chair that was brought down to the ring by Seth Rollins, of course. However, Rollins makes a comeback, connecting with a Falcon Arrow onto the steel chair, but there was no count at all from Lacey Evans on this. Rollins confronts Lacey, only for Lacey to slap Rollins twice across the face before hitting a low blow. Corbin then nails Rollins with a deep 6 before Lacey could make the count. However, Becky Lynch runs out, tackles Lacey to the outside, dropping Lacey with a Bexploder into the barriers. The crowd are absolutely loving this. John Cohen, usual regular WWE referee, of course, comes out just as Seth Rollins hits Corbin with a curb stomp and counts the pinfall victory. 1, 2, 3. Rollins is able to defend his Universal Championship. Looking at the match, you didn't think that was actually going to happen. You thought that all the odds were going to weigh against the Universal Champion. But Becky Lynch came to the match, saved the day for her boyfriend, Seth Rollins. Now, many people have been critical of this match with Lacey's involvement and the way the match ended. But I thought that it was a fairly well-booked match. I quite liked the inclusion of Becky Lynch coming in to save the day for Seth Rollins at the end. As you mentioned earlier, not quite keen on kind of how the WWE appeared to be presenting their relationship on screen, whether it's a little bit too much or a little bit unnecessary. Like I say, I thought it was a well-booked match, some good heel heat for Lacey Evans and Baron Corbin, a fairly good way to end this pay-per-view. What were your kind of thoughts on this main event match for the Universal Championship, Tommy?
Well, I was really pleasantly surprised by Lacey. I thought Lacey was really good in the role of being the referee. Like, she was just awesome in her, first, like, she's doing the regular pinfall. She's kind of trying to, and then she's looking at Corbin like, hey, wait, you really can't just utilize, I should just make it a no DQ match. And then, then her arms hurt, then leading to one thing after another. And it was funny because the crowd live started immediately with the AEW chants, right? Like right at the beginning, AEW. Then it was CM Punk. And then it went from that to they started chanting for Becky. And so WWE backstage must have just been like, thank God, like they're into that story because that was in the cards. And when Becky came out, I think the place just exploded. And it's interesting that they're being so public, as you said, with that idea of Rollins and Becky being together. I don't think they need to mention it nearly as much as they do. But it is interesting to kind of have them there together. It might not be necessarily something that I personally love, but I think the crowd certainly is into it. I think that, my phone blew up with a bunch of friends who were watching, and all of them were so excited when Becky came out. So it's definitely something that is working for that perspective. And I thought it was a clever way to get Rollins to keep the belt and yet continue the story going with both now the two champs together going against the other two folks.
Yeah, it looks like we could be heading into a mixed match challenge type scenario heading into the next pay-per-view, possibly with Becky and Seth teaming up to take on Lacey and Baron Corbin. That will possibly be part of the lineup for Extreme Rules, as we mentioned earlier on. So overall, I thought this was a very good pay-per-view. There was some, let's say, I think certainly the first 4 or 5 matches, including the kickoff show match between Tozawa, Nice, and Gulak, was excellent. I really enjoyed the Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens New Day match. I thought Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre certainly delivered with the inclusion of Shane McMahon and his outside interference. But I'd say I think match of the night for me has to go to that cruiserweight match. I thought that they really delivered. And one thing I didn't mention was the crowd were on fire for that cruiserweight match, and I don't think that it was a packed arena by any stretch of the imagination, but there was a lot of noise for that match, and I think that could hopefully prompt the WWE to give us more cruiserweight action, possibly on the main card going forward. But what's your kind of overall opinion on the show itself and some of your key highlights?
I think probably my overall opinion of it is just like, I think folks get so negative sometimes on this particular show. Like, oh, this show's going to be terrible. This show's going to be awful. It's like, this show's not going to be terrible. Like, look up and down the card. Like, as I was filling out that predictions sheet, I was like, this could be a pretty darn good show. Like, there's not anything on this show that looks terrible. So I think that, I think sometimes people get so amped up. Oh, I'm so excited for AEW. I'm so excited for New Japan. Yeah, I'm excited for the G1 to start. I'm excited for Fyter Fest and all that. But it's okay to also still be excited to watch Stomping Grounds, So I was glad that the show went well. And, sometimes when you go into a show with lower expectations, it ends up just being a great surprise. And that's what I thought Stomping Grounds was. I thought, as you mentioned, the Cruiserweight match, Joe and Ricochet, and that Daniel Bryan Rowan against Heavy Machinery. I thought those were probably the 3 top matches. Loved those matches, and it ended up being a really good show. It ended up being a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. And going back to one of your previous points, I think this show and some of the matches in particular definitely had, gave us some new stars, gave us some new names, made some new superstars. I mean, Ricochet certainly coming out as the new US champion. Certainly they've created a new star there, and of course they've been building him up since February this year, I believe. Heavy Machinery, I think they came out with a few new fans after this evening. The Cruiserweight match, and I think all 3 competitors in that match certainly came away with a lot more credibility, a lot more fans, Drew Gulak, the new Cruiserweight champion. So I think it was a night where you didn't have the AJ Styles, you didn't have the Charlotte Flairs, those sort of top names, but it did allow for some new names to kind of come in and for them to kind of get themselves over. And I think that this night will be remembered for some of the newer names, the less familiar names, getting themselves over this evening. But yeah, overall, I thought it was an excellent show. And going into, I think the expectations were on the whole quite low. But when you break down the card, look at the matches, and then kind of watch them all play out, I think you have to stand back and take your hat off to WWE. They've delivered again, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely, as you mentioned, Heavy Machinery there. Think about it, that this show was really their first big match on a pay-per-view. They're supposed to be these lovable baby faces. They're expecting to get that great response, and they get booed. But they don't get rattled throughout any of that, and they keep par to course, so to speak, and eventually even win over some of those fans that were booing them. So, as you mentioned them, I just that thought kind of went in my mind, and yeah, it was really cool. As you mentioned, a lot of folks like Charlotte, no Finn Balor either. He wasn't anywhere to be found. But it gave others a chance to get that shine, and I don't think everyone needs to be on the show. I think that keeps people fresh by having them spread out a bit.
Definitely. Well, Tommy, that brings us to the end of this episode of Wrestling with Johners in our review of Stomping Grounds. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast this week. I really, really appreciate it. For my listeners out there that want to get in touch with you, if you've got any kind of social media plugs, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, where can my listeners find you on social media, Tommy?
Yeah, absolutely. Twitter is probably where I'm most active. You guys can find me over there at WatchWrestlePod. Probably because I was thinking of starting a podcast originally. So also Watchalong Wrestling was too long for the Twitter handle. So it's WatchWrestlePod. And then obviously on Twitter on YouTube is Watchalong Wrestling, youtube.com/Watchalong Wrestling. Also on Instagram, need to be a little more active on there, but that would be Instagram. You can find me there as well as at Watchalong Wrestling. So
there we go. So check out Tommy on his very good YouTube page. I've seen all of your WrestleMania vlogs, so please keep up the good work there. I can't wait to see more of your stuff and more of your watch-along wrestling videos as well. So yeah, thank you very much, Tommy, for coming on board. Hopefully we'll get you back on the podcast sometime in the future.
Absolutely, yeah, I loved it. Thanks so much for having me on, and hopefully I can have you on sometime too. It'd be great to have you on, and you're going to a couple of shows, and love to get your live thoughts of how those shows went afterwards. That'd be great.
I'd love to do that. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Wrestling with Jonas. If you did, please don't forget to hit like, subscribe, share, and shout about this podcast. Tell your friends and tell your family, and keep listening to the Wrestling with Jonas podcast for all of your weekly NXT, NXT UK, WWE, and kind of all-round wrestling goodness. Without you sharing and subscribing to this podcast, we can't continue to grow. So hit like and subscribe now. Thanks again to Tommy, and thank you to everybody for listening and watching. And in the meantime, we'll catch up with you all very soon. But have a great day. Catch up with you all soon, and take care.